Hey, what is going on, guys? Weevil YouTube here, back with another video. This is a Dino Rabbit deck profile, but I would first of all like to apologise. Sorry, there was an Atlantean seahorseman there. I'd like to apologise for the mistake in my previous video to do with spell speed of skill drain, as well as a couple of other things. I was very tired that day. I was in a rush to get into town, and I didn't edit the video, and I just didn't think. And I was thinking about different spell speeds and all that stuff at the same time, and I just made a couple of little errors. I do apologise for that. I obviously do know the rules, so needless to say. In any case, the topic of this video is not just the Rescue Rabbit deck profile, it's also a speculation about what decks are going to be top tier in the next format. The first thing I have to ask is how the format has changed. I mean, what decks have now collapsed and fallen to the sidelines? Well, first of all, we'll see the game slow down a lot in a more general sense. I think that Tribute Summoning might actually be playable. Setting monsters without fear of them being destroyed by Insector Hurt Derp might be possible as well. Not drawing effect failure in your first turn might not be the end of the world anymore, or an automatic game loss, as some people seem to think, against windups, for example. Of course, some decks have survived the wrath of the Banlist, and these decks would be the likes of Dark Worlds, Tech Genesis variants, X-Sabers, Six Samurais, who of course won the WCQ Central American event, and I fully expect them to see, more play. Any deck which basically thrives on control and a more paced, more methodical style of play, or which was unable to keep up with the controlling powers of windups and Insectors, for example, as well as Chaos Dragons, which were like my pet deck and the deck that I love to play. I will still try and make it playable. Of course, it is going to be a lot less consistent now. Nevertheless, these are the decks which shall emerge and create a new, what I feel, a multiplicity of top tier decks. More decks than we've ever seen in the top tier. In fact, it may kind of dilute the tiers to an extent, and a more varied meta than we've seen in quite a while. At least that's what I hope will happen. I don't necessarily know, I can't see the future, I can't predict what people are going to end up doing. But in any case, the first of these I will be discussing is, as you can see here, the Dino Ninja Rabbit type variant. So let's get straight into it, shall we? What has changed in the deck, basically it's lost a rabbit, it's lost a tour guide, and it's lost a Pot of Duality, but other than that, it hasn't really lost all that much. If anything, it's made room for more kind of intricate strategies, rather than just your staple rabbit cards. So let us get into the profile. It's a lot more offensive, another thing I should note before I begin, than the previous build. It has a lot more monsters in it, as you can see from the Hydrogeddons. But in any case, we have 2 Rescue Rabbits, we have 3 Cabazols, we have 3 Sabersaurus, 2 Tour Guide from the Underworld, 1 Tour Bus from the Underworld, and 1 Signin. 1 Gores, 3 Jirak Guaibas, 3 Hydrogeddons, these are new. If you're playing in the OCG, it also allows you to go into Bahamut Shark, who is amazing, I feel. I was going to say he's going to be extremely overlooked, but I very much doubt it, because you can go into Acid Golem with this guy in the TCG, and of course the Leviathan Dragon, who can't do anything, but it's a free monster, so like, why not? The Ninja engine is 2 Ninja Grandmaster Hanzos, and the 2 Ninjutsu Arts of Super Transformation. For the spells, we have Monster Reborn, Heavy Storm, Dark Hole, 3 Forbidden Lances, 2 Pots of Duality, 1 Reinforcement of the Army to search up the Hanzo, 1 Pot of Avarice, and 1 Mystical Space Typhoon. So I believe Rabbit decks used to run 3 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon, but I've dropped it down to 1 to incorporate a more monster-heavy build. As for the other traps, we have 2 Solemn Warnings, Bottomless Trap Holes, and Dimensional Prisons, respectively. This is the area I feel where the deck needs the most work, because as you can see, Torrential Tributes are absent, Solemn Judgment is also absent. So the deck isn't as good at defending itself as the previous builds of Rabbit used to be. But there are a lot more monsters in the deck, and that's where I feel this deck has an advantage. Torrential Tributes I excluded because I didn't really want to be destroying my own cards when I was swarming the field. And if I'm stalling to the point where my opponent can swarm, I'm probably not going to win the duel anyway. If I top deck into a Rabbit, they'll more than likely have some back row set up. Speaking of the extra deck and the synchros, we have 2 Elves Arlagias, 2 Dalkas, 2 Leviers. That's pretty standard. I usually only see Levier at 1 actually, but I've put him at 2 because you never know, even though I don't have 3 tour guides anymore, but you never know, it could happen. 1 Z-Mains and Leviathan just for more rank 3 options. As for the rank 4s, Bahamut Shark, even though he's not out yet, I think he will be extremely viable in the upcoming months when he finally does get released. I don't know when he's getting released, in fact. I don't really know. Acid Golem of Destruction, we actually don't have him in Europe yet, but for you guys in the US who have him, he's awesome. You should definitely use him. I use him in Atlanteans here on Dueling Network, so he's amazing. As for the rank 4s, the 2 best rank 4s in the game, the only 2 I ever used, I kind of like been preaching this for a while, Mysord Symphony Djinn and number 39, Utopia. The numbers are an interesting archetype, actually. They're going to get a lot of support in the future. From the guy at Lando recently, and also the guy in the next set, the Dyson Sphere. In any case, so about this deck. The real question is, how does it match up against the current meta? Well, the decks that I expect to see, as I have already discussed above, the likes of Dark Worlds, Tech Genis, X Sabers, Six Samurais, and of course the old favourites, such as Windups, Heroes, and Chaos Dragons. So rather than, list the decks, I'm just going to kind of discuss it in a more general sense. Tech Genis, obviously skill drain is their biggest strength, and the fact they can go into Beast King Barbaros, a big 3000 attack beatstick, who can basically attack over every single card in his deck, apart from Lagia when he uses a lance or something. But it's a bit of a push just to get over a Beast King Barbaros. Other than that, however, all of the dinos in the deck, apart from Hydrogeddon, can get over their strongest Tech Genis monster, which is Tech Genis Rush Rhino. So, with that in mind, in a pure face-to-face attack, before they've set up their kind of defensive plays, and before they play their skill reigns, these dinos can technically attack over them. But, of course, on paper, it really means nothing. It's all about what happens in the individual duels. But as a matchup, I'd say they're pretty evenly matched. Skill Drain, of course, hurts, because Guaiba isn't able to swarm, nor is Hydrogeddon. Hanzo doesn't get his effect. Torgai doesn't get his effect. Rabbit is fine, because Rabbit can just banish himself. But, it'll definitely hurt the deck. Skill Drain would hurt any deck. You can't base how well a deck matches up against another deck because of Skill Drain. Because Skill Drain just hurts, full stop. There's no deck that doesn't use face-up effects. It's just, it's just a fact. Six Samurais. I think Six Samurais are going to be okay, but I think they're still kind of dead by the fact, basically because they don't have a second Shien or third Shien, and once they swarm, and that swarm is stopped, and they're slowed down, then they're basically dead. Also, they may rely on swarming, but if I get Rabbit out early, and I get out an Evilzar Dalka, for example, or a Lagia, if I stop them from having a Samurai on the field at any point, they'll basically be screwed. And that is basically why I feel Rabbit would have a slight edge over Six Samurais in the upcoming format. As for X Sabers, while they may be a bit more slow, a bit more methodical, they must first establish field presence. This is similar to Six Samurais. And if they cannot do that, then Rabbit will be at a distinct advantage. For example, if you can go into Rabbit early on, which is why I'm thinking of replacing some of the spell cards, perhaps the Reinforcement of the Army, with a Gold Sarcophagus or 2, because I really think going into first turn Rabbit is the best possible thing you can do in this deck, of course. So if you have a Tour Guide and a Gold Sarcophagus in your hand, that is instantly a Leviair and a Lagia. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. In any case, onward we go. Chaos Dragons, born anew, as I like to call them. I will be doing a deck profile on these guys very, very soon. I've been thinking about this deck a lot. I mean, I haven't put up the deck profile yet. You'd think it'd be the deck I'd put up first, because of course they're like my favourite deck right now, or at least they were. But I want to think extra hard about this particular deck profile. When I get to 200 subscribers, which is like 3 subscribers away, I will start finalising the editing on that video and get it up for you guys to watch. Yeah. Anyway. So, as for the Chaos Dragons, with only one Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, which was essentially the biggest threat to Rescue Rabbit, because it can attack over everything in the deck, and of course Chaos Dragons ran Forbidden Lances as well, so Rabbit's one way of getting over big monsters was also Chaos Dragon's way of getting over even bigger monsters. So, with that at 1, Rescue Rabbit has a far better chance of beating a Chaos Dragon deck, depending on the individual matchup. And of course, you have to remember that they can side in Macrocosmos against Chaos Dragons, which of course completely screws them over, as we all know. So yeah, that is basically the only thing worth noting about the Chaos Dragon Dino Rabbit matchup. As for the Elemental Heroes, as we know, E-Emergency Call's gone to 2, and the Hero Lives has gone to 2, which isn't really going to affect the deck that much at all, in my opinion. So, with that in mind, I still think Heroes will actually be a pretty big threat, because They, of course, have their one card Miracle Fusion plays, which hasn't been touched by the banlist, nor have their heroes, Bubbleman, Alias, or Stratos. So they still basically have, the staple engine in place. And they, in fact, have a new fusion spell, or a new spell that allows them to fusion some Miracle Contact. I don't think it's nearly as good because you're putting the monsters back into the deck, and with only 2 emergency calls now, and 2 a hero lives, it's not going to be nearly as effective. Nevertheless, as a matchup against Dino Rabbit, you basically have their one turn Shining plays. Shining, which can attack over every single card that Dino Rabbit can put against it. The most annoying thing about heroes is that they can sit back, a lot like Dark Worlds, and just allow the opponent to waste their resources, chain their Gemini Sparks, and do whatever else, and then go for a Miracle next turn. So, I think Rabbit has always had a difficult matchup against heroes. But again, like all decks, if you can get early momentum, if you can get Rabbit out early, if you can get a Lagia or a Dalka on the field, then of course you are at a distinct advantage. That is always the way, but I feel that with 1700, 1600, 1900, whatever, beaters on the field, they won't really be enough if you can't establish momentum early to get over the likes of a Elemental Hero Shining, an Elemental Hero Absolute Zero, or, whatever else, Gaia, or, stuff like that. It'll just be very frustrating for the player if they can get advantage early. But of course, consistency is far lower for both of these decks since they've been hit significantly enough by the banlist. Finally, we have Windups. The deck everyone was talking about last format, the deck that was winning the European Championships, that was winning the North American Nationals, that everybody was hyping up so much because of the loop. And I kind of rather cynically stated that the deck only won because of the Windup loop. When in fact, that isn't true at all. I mean, the majority of duels I've had recently, before we've started using the new list, Windups actually beat me without using the loop. Just using, regular swarming of rank 5 and rank 3 and rank 4 XYZs. And, it was a much more natural way to be beaten by a deck, kind of just being outswarmed and outplayed, basically. I just think the loop as a tool was a little silly. And I was sort of overreacting at the time because the loop was all anyone was talking about and it was beating everybody and it was just very, very frustrating for people. And that is why I was kind of hyping and running my mouth about the Windup loop. But in any case, Windup Carrier has gone down to 1. That slows the deck down significantly, but not to the point where it's not playable, because Rescue Rabbit can still have trouble against this deck. Carrier, as I say, doesn't carry the deck, no pun intended. But I still think that this will be a pretty tough matchup. It's still a very good control deck, and Rabbit, basically, to win the duel against Windups, needs to rely on effect negation. So it would more than likely be going into Dalga in most of its duels, most of the time. So, it's going to be a very interesting format. The reason I haven't said one way or another that one deck will be superior over another is because, honest to God, Dark World is the only deck I can think of that hasn't been touched at all by the banlist that was, in the last format, tier 1.5 or higher. So, that's the only deck I can think of that stands a little bit above the rest of them. But Dark World, as we know, isn't the most consistent of decks, and there are so many different variants you can use with Golds and Silvas. The more turbo-based decks will only 10 or 11 monsters. So there's not really any single build that people have established as a successful winning build, apart from that one YCS that that guy won with the Dark World deck. So we don't really know what's going to happen, but all I can tell you with Rescue Rabbit is that it hasn't been touched all that much. It's still a very strong deck, and I highly recommend people to try it out if they haven't played it before. Because if anything, it's safe to play certain decks now that Inzectors have been kind of washed away and are no longer viable. I'm sure people will still find a way to make that one Dragonfly and that one Hornet useful, but it won't be nearly as effective as it used to be. Any case, guys, that is it for the video. Let me know what you think is going to top in this meta. One more thing, actually, I'll be doing a competition when I hit 200 subscribers for my Silver Sentinel card, which I pulled at the Return of the Duel sneak peek. If you guys want to win that card for free, you might as well enter. What I like to do is when I put up the competition video, you have to like the video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe already and leave a comment saying enter me, and then I will enter you in the competition. At the end of, I'll probably give it about 48 hours, I will pick a random comment if there are enough of them, and yeah, it's only if there are enough of them anyways. If there are enough of them, and then I will give the card to that person, and we'll sort out kind of postage and whatever else if you guys live in the US or something like that. But it's free, so you might as well enter. And yeah, That's it for the video, guys. Be sure to comment, rate, and subscribe. As always, I am Weevil YouTuber. Thank you very much for watching, as always, and I am signing out. Peace, guys.